Well, I got drafted, and at that time I was up in Richmond, Virginia, at the draft center, and with a whole lot of people. And after I got out of high school, uh, it was strange because while I was there, uh, I think it was because of my mom, actually, because she was so concerned about me going to Vietnam and what was going on. Because I mean, I really never paid it much attention because when I was in high school, I was playing sports and I had a girlfriend. Vietnam was far from my mind. But I think because of her and her concern, that's why I tried to get in the Navy instead of the Army. So when I went to the Navy, of course, the Navy was in the same building, and when they did the physical, I had some problems with my back when I was born, and they said I couldn't pass the physical. So when I went over to then the Army did a physical on me and said, no problem, we'll take you. So when I told her that, what the Navy guy told me, if I got a letter from a doctor that was treating me, then they could possibly get me in the Navy. So that's what happened. I got a letter. My mom faxed it to them, and they allowed me to go in the Navy. And while I was sitting there eating a box lunch with another guy, because a friend of mine went with me to go join together, but he had a problem. They wouldn't take him at all. And I don't know if he had sugar in his, there was a problem with him physically. And while I was sitting there, there was a whole group of guys sitting off to our right. There must have been 20, 25 guys. And this Army sergeant and this Marine sergeant came out, and they said, who wants to be in the Army? And a few of the guys got up and walked, they said, go over here, and they did. And the Marine said, who wants to be in the Marine Corps? Get over here. Some guys got out and went over there. Of course, the majority of the people were still sitting there. So all of a sudden, he said, one of them said, is that it? And nobody said a word. He goes, okay. He goes, you're in the Army, you're in the Marines. You're in the Army, you're in the Marines. He went right down the line. And I knew right then that I probably had made the best choice. But but after serving on 3 different ships, I got kind of bored, And our ships I was always in the Gator Navy, and we were always going to Vietnam. And one of the ships was stationed in Yokosuka, Japan. So we were constantly carrying material to the Marines in Da Nang. And so I kind of got interested in what was going on there at Da Nang, and thought I might volunteer to drive some forklifts. So that's how I got decided to go in country and do it.
So just to rewind a little bit, I think I'm hearing from you what I've heard from, I think, every Navy vet I've spoken with who ended up in a combat role in the Navy. I think they've all told me that they initially joined the Navy because they did not want to get into combat in Vietnam.
Yeah, no,
but then
it's kind of ironic.
Yeah. So you enlist in the Navy in '66. You serve on different ships. One of the ships has you, in the Da Nang area, and you get interested in what's going on in Vietnam, and so then you volunteer for service in country.
Yeah, we went up the Perfume River I was on a LST, and we pulled into Da Nang, dropped the ramp. They were offloading, and then we got mortared. And the ship, we had to get underway because of the general quarters. Everybody's in their underwear, getting the ship underway.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just wanted to drive those forklifts for some reason, But anyway, so what I did after that was I filled out a chit to volunteer, and I didn't specify exactly what I wanted to do, apparently. And I put in there I wanted to go to Da Nang, but I didn't specify anything. So next thing I know, I was called up. The captain and myself were both from the same place in Virginia, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Virginia Beach area, and we got to be friends. Basically, it was weird because I mean he was a nice guy. So he called me up to his stateroom and asked me, did I know where I was going to be going? He says, you got some orders to go back to the States for survival school and weapons training. He said, you're going to rag boats. I said, what? He said, Mobile Riverine Force, patrol boats. And I said, yeah, that's not something I wanted to do. He said, well, I'll try to get you out of it if you want me to. And I said, well, yeah, if you can. May he called me up, about a week later and told me all I could say is he wished me a lot of luck. that he couldn't get me out of it.
I want to go back to what you said. You're on this. It's a LST going up the Perfume River.
Yeah, the Tom Green County.
And so the ship was mortared, and
Yep.
some folks would say the ship was mortared, so I got that little taste of what combat's like, and that drove home to me that I did not want to be in Vietnam, but it seemed like it had a different impact on you.
Well, the base got mortared. The ship never got hit.
Okay.
Yeah, I just remember I was up on the bridge and that's where my station was, the general quarters. And I don't know, when you're young, things like that don't bother you as much, I don't think. And but that's that's it's just I don't know that particular incident. I think was the only case that I ever had where we were actually in a tight situation on a ship.
Right. And so then when do you arrive in South Vietnam then for the Riverine service?
Yeah, that was 69. We we were in California after all of our training, and they came in one night and said, we're leaving. And they flew us to Seattle, Washington. And I think it was the next day. It was like midnight when we left California. And I think the next about a 2 day or day and a half, they flew us to Vietnam. And of course, we landed in Ton Sa Nuc Air Base. And then they took us. Well, when we landed, they said that we were there for like about 2 or 3 days before they were going to take us out to our boats. And we were staying at the Annapolis Hotel. And myself and about 4 other guys went down the street and went to a bar. And 2 of the guys decided to go back to the hotel. And we decided to stay for a little while longer. And we heard this loud explosion, and that's when they blew up the front of the Annapolis Hotel. And 2 of the guys were basically right there in the street when it went off. We lost them.
This was presumably a Viet Cong kind of.
Yeah, they sappers. They were on a motorcycle, and they set it off right in front of the hotel, and it was a pretty bad scene. We when we heard the explosion, we left the bar, started going down the street, and there was a lot of small arms fire. So we jumped in some shop, and I remember them closing the shop, the door. They had these pulled down aluminum shutters, and we were stuck in there for a few hours. And we did decide to leave, start walking down the street back toward the hotel. It was a pretty bad scene, because the streets are really, really crowded.
Sure.
So it
So
was,
yeah, I mean, not fishing for gory stories or anything.
yeah.
When you say a really bad scene, what's part of
Well,
what you mean?
there was a bus with all these bicycles and people crammed underneath of it, and there was two guys. I guess I don't know if they were on the motorcycle or what. One guy was in the ditch and waving his arm, half his arm was gone. It was just a weird, really weird scene to walk through. And once we got up to the hotel and got inside, uh, all the racks had where we normally had slept there had shrapnel all in it. It was a pretty bad explosion. They got us out of there after that and took us to the airport, and we flew out on a C-130 to where our boats were going to be. They put us on there, and we had to sit down on our butts and put our legs wrapped around the guy in front of us. And they told us, they were going to fly into this temporary airstrip and that they were not going to stop. And that when they got down to the end of the runway, they were going to make a 180 turn, and we had better be out because they were going to take right back off. And that's exactly what they did. We got down when they started turning, we started jumping off the thing. And they just took off. And because we were getting small arms fire coming in, you could hear it hitting the plane. And, and the guys were telling us to stay down. But it seemed like it was pretty normal to them.
Did you have, I mean, you're experiencing war, immediately. You're in country just a few days. Did you have the experience I've heard from others where you think, wow, I mean, I've got a long way to go. This is just day 2 and 3. I don't know if I'm going to make it.
I never really thought about it, actually. I don't know why. I really didn't think about it until later on, when I was on the boats and was actually getting shot at and thought that, there was actually people shooting at me.
Yeah.
I think the other experiences were just, there's other people involved in it and other people that were hurt.
Right.
It just didn't affect me personally.
Now, what kind of boat did you serve on?
The first boat I was on was a Zippo, which had 2 flame mounts on the front, a 20 millimeter gun turret on the front, on the top, and one in the back. And I was a 20 millimeter gunner in the back turret.
So I'm assuming
Then,
I'm assuming it's called Zippo after the lighter.
yeah. The thing was that when they finally came to pick us up to take us to our boats, once we got there, they told us that the boat that we were going to go on and was trained on, which was a Monitor, had a 105 Howitzer on the front, like a tank.
Yeah.
Didn't need us to replace that crew. We had to go to another boat. It was called a Zippo. That's the first time I had ever heard about a Zippo.
And where in the Delta were you based? I'm assuming you're down in the Mekong.
Yeah, we were in I guess it's what is it? I core. I guess it's
A
4.
I think.
Yeah, all the way down south.
And
Yeah.
out of what like was there a town close by or that you remember?
Well, once I got to Dong Tam, that was the main base for I guess for the Mobile Riverine Force. But never saw it. They took us to our boats, and I forget where they were exactly at that time, but um, once we took over the crew, replaced the crew, um, we were on the Benawa, where a lot of the boats were, stationed, hung out, because they could get up to the smaller rivers off the Mekong from that location. And it moved, it pulled anchor and moved at different times. It didn't stay stationary. But most of the time we were up in the canals, up in the rivers, and we'd stay up there, like at an army base or wherever they needed us.
What's the basic mission of a Zippo boat?
It was mainly support, not like the tango boats who carried, troops. We were there for support, like the Monitor was,
Meaning,
support.
meaning if so troops are being taken to some place where they're going to do a patrol, the I don't know if convoy of boats is the right term, but anyway, the boats come under fire. By support, you mean basically kind of the equivalent of fire support.
Yeah,
Literally in this case, fire support, like
for the
fire from the boat.
yeah, for the boats, mainly to save the boat.
So
Yeah, um, the troops we were carrying a few times that were in tango boats, we were behind those boats in columns, and because mainly, I guess I'm not sure, but most of the time, like the second boat usually got hit, and then once that started, the Monitor would fire it, and we would probably put the napalm, put that out, and try to encircle them if we could. That was our goal.
So you've got some boats, or I think probably all of the boats will open up with, the guns that they have, and your boat will do that, but it will also then fire the napalm as well.
Oh yeah. Well, the boats had M60s. Our boat had 50 calibers too. Our engineman would fire those, and he'd be out of a scuttle between the two gun mounts, and he had a 51 on each side, depending on which side you got hit on. But that was his job. But most of the boats had, 50 calibers and M60s on them. And when it started like that, when the big stuff started happening, like the Monitor and stuff, I mean, that's pretty loud. You know, um, you don't even hear the other stuff hardly.
Just because of the weaponry that's on that boat.
Yeah, the big stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can, if you can, what we tried to do is figure out where it was coming from and encircle that area with the napalm, because they didn't like that napalm. I don't know if it was something about if they burned to death or something like that, that they wouldn't, their spirits wouldn't come back. There was something like that. I don't remember exactly, but they didn't like the napalm. And I remember the boats having a bounty on them because of that.
Specifically the Zippo boat.
Yeah, yeah. And we went wherever they called us to go. The boats needed some support. They they requested a Zippo or a Monitor come up to that area.
What
Yeah.
I've heard from other river guys, so I'm interested if this fits your experience. You're going up these rivers, these canals, often very narrow, and there's just this really tense feeling, like you're going to get hit, and it's just a matter of when,
Yeah.
and you never get to fire the first shot. They always get to fire the first shot. Does that fit with your experience?
Yeah, that's exactly true. I mean, you never start it, you know. You just hope it don't start. We had patrols every day, every night. We never hardly ever went out during the daytime. And during that time, we were, either sleeping or whatever, trying to get some rest. But it was mainly night patrols, and it was so often that I don't know, it just got like second nature. You really didn't worry about it, and I think that's because of our ages. We were like young 20-year-old guys. We didn't worry about it. But
What is the story? You've mentioned something, in something you wrote, that I'd never heard before, and that is a reference to Taiwanese mercenaries.
yeah,
Is that, and there's a mission, I guess, near the Cambodian border. So can you just kind of walk us through that mission and the story about these Taiwanese mercenaries who are fighting with you guys?
we had an operation. We were up near the Vente Canal, and we had an operation to go up there to take a couple of tango boats. I think they had some troops with them, and it was a monitor and ourselves, and we started heading down the canal, and it was just getting dark. All of a sudden, we heard these boats coming across these rice paddies, and it was these airboats like you see in Florida, and they had these skulls and crossbones on the rudder, and they had a guy sitting on the front with an M60 machine gun and a light, and a guy driving it. And it was like, I think 4 or 5 of them, and they were coming across the rice paddies, and I heard over the radio that they were going to be joining us on this mission. And I knew there was Koreans over there, and Filipinos and Australians, but I never saw them mercenaries before.
And they were from Taiwan.
Yeah, well, that's what I found out later. They were Chinese.
So these Taiwanese mercenaries join you guys, and then a firefight ensues pretty soon after that.
Yeah, we were. Everything was pretty quiet, and we were heading down the river, and all of a sudden, I heard a couple of like B-40 rockets hit the boat up in front of us. I mean, you could tell what they were. And it was about 2 or 3 of them, and then the monitor started firing, and then we started firing. Because the radios, everybody's talking about it, where they were and everything. And I think that was my first experience that it really, I thought I could get hurt. But we got through it, and one of the boats just was drifting over to the side of the bank. Nobody was driving it. So a couple of us got off and got over there on it, and everybody on the boat was hurt. And they had a couple of Vietnamese Navy guys we started, getting Vietnamese on the boats because they were getting ready to turn them over eventually. But these guys just laid down the bottom of the boat. They didn't fire a weapon or anything. And everybody on there, the Americans were all hurt. One of them was killed, which was a pretty bad scene, to see all those guys like that.
So did you then provide security around the boat and call in Medevac?
Yeah, we did. We called Medevac. So myself and another guy went down in the coxswain where this guy had fallen and tried to get him out, but it was just he was pretty bad. He had been hit in the head with a rocket, so couldn't get him out. But anyway, I guess somebody got him out, and what happened? They put him on those airboats, and those guys took him back down that same canal that was burning. Went down that same canal and took him back to the base camp where we had left. one of the airboats. I think maybe one or two of them went back. The rest of them stayed with us. But and then we, the helicopters came in and started picking up the guys that were, hit with shrapnel and stuff. I I took one guy. One guy was hit in the chest, and he was laying in like a rack. I think he had got back. He had crawled into a rack,
Oh.
and had a chest wound. And I was talking to him, trying to help him out. You could tell he was going into shock. But yeah, and then a couple of guys took over the boat, and they told us to stay out there, and we went and set up ambush. We like 1,000 meters apart, set up ambush the rest of the night.
Ambush,
In
meaning
case,
you got
yeah,
off the boats or you're in the boats
no,
still?
we were in the boats and we tied to like a bush or a tree, and we were far apart from each other. And anything that crossed over from that area, we were supposed to intercept.
Oh, so like waiting for sampans or
Yeah,
something to come through.
waiting for end people. And we tied to something that if we had to get out of there, we could yank it out pretty easy,
Yeah.
But
Now, so this firefight takes place close to the Cambodia border. Do you remember what the mission was that you were on when?
yeah, I mean, going up there on that Vente Canal, you could see a North Vietnamese hospital in Cambodia. Um, we saw the hospital and we saw people walking around. Um, it was weird because they were on the right side of the canal, and where we got the ambush was on the left side. So, and it was down from the hospital. But yeah, that's probably the closest we got into. I guess we were into Cambodia at that time.
Now, but did the rules of engagement say that you couldn't shoot across the border into Cambodia?
No, I don't. Yeah, we didn't do that. Nobody even. I don't even remember anybody mentioning that to shoot over there if we had to. Um,
Well, I mean, so you can see the NVA in
yeah,
Cambodia, but there's not even a thought about, oh, there's NVA, we should take them out.
no, no. Well, it was a hospital. I mean, you could see guys on crutches and stuff like that. It was a hospital, and we knew that. So I mean, we weren't going to blow up the hospital.
Right.
But then, we weren't even, we just went by it. We were just going down the canal, going to where we were supposed to go. And when the firefight started, I think that was the worst one I was ever in because of so many people getting hurt.
How long did that go on? My impression is that a lot of these fights that take place on the rivers, it's over in a couple of minutes. Did this one go on for a while?
Yeah, no, that one didn't. I was in one that lasted a pretty good while. And that was because this Australian advisor was with some Vietnamese Marines and he got overran. And when we got up there, we had to stay for a while. But yeah, they hit and run. They hit you, and then you don't know if they're there or not. To tell you the truth,
But this one,
sometimes there had been times where you'd see them, but this particular time, because it was dark and everything, we didn't see anybody.
now, so you're on these rivers at night. Um, so I mean, are you lights out? I mean, how are you navigating these rivers at night?
Yeah, well, what we did in training was they'd take a red light and put it the guy on the back of the boat and a gun mount would flash it back toward the boat behind us, in front of us.
So you just follow that.
You follow that, yeah, and it was pretty tricky. I mean, the coxswains were, I'd have to say Frank was a really good coxswain. he kept everything. And when I was on that boat with him, now on the Zippo, we never had any problem running aground or anything. There was one time where we were prepping the beach, and I had dropped a M79 grenade launcher in my gun mount, and I went down to get it, and they had like red lights on down there. And when I picked up the grenade and I came back up to my mount, and I loaded the grenade launcher, and I fired it, and I probably shouldn't have fired it because it was dark and I couldn't see very well. But when it exploded, it came back and hit me in the face. Because the boat had gotten way over to the bank, too far over to the bank, but it was so dark you couldn't really.
Oh, so some of it, what's kind of the air blast or something came back in?
No, shrapnel.
Shrapnel came back in.
Yeah. And when I woke up, I was like on another boat, and they were treating my jaw. I really thought I kind of died in a way, because it was, I woke up and it was like all red, and I was going, oh God, what's going on? It was really confusing to me,
Yeah.
But everything was all right. I mean, I was okay, and I went back to the boat, and we just kept on going.
Were you responding to an enemy?
Yeah, no, well, what we were doing is prepping the beach
Prep.
to drop troops off in that area,
Yeah.
in case there was anything there that they would run into. We were sent up to an area where this Australian advisor was calling and requesting help because his base camp was being overran, and we went up there and gave him support and suppressed them. And he came over to the boat afterwards, thanking everybody. I'll never forget him because he had one of those, Australian hats on, and he had that accent. He's a pretty cool guy, calm about things. And he said that they were fighting hand-to-hand combat. So, it was great that we had come up there and helped them out.
So he was an advisor with Vietnamese Marines.
Yeah, or Vietnamese Army. I think it's probably the Army. Yeah.
And then you mentioned that, gradually through your tour, you've got more Vietnamese coming on your boat. So Vietnamization process is underway, right?
Yeah, it started. We got once I left the Zippo and went over to the Tango boat, we got a couple of Vietnamese on there. All the boats had a couple, and we were training them supposedly. And
Well, I want to ask about that supposedly. You said we were training them supposedly.
yeah.
What does that tell me about your perception of the South Vietnamese forces?
I don't think they cared, to tell you the truth. Because sometimes one of them would be missing, or both of them would be gone, and they'd go back home. And then we'd get a couple more. But I think the majority of them really didn't care. I think if we'd have left them alone, it would have been fine. I think all they cared about really was, I don't think communism was a big fear. I think our government, it probably scared our government more than it did them. I think if they were just left alone and was able to take care of their family and feed themselves and fish, I think they like they are right now. They're content. There was one instance where we had taken a bunch of Vietnamese Marines up near a ferry crossing up near Cambodia on this one mission, and we must have had about 5 Tango boats full of troops, and we were, support for them. We had a couple of helicopters that were Cobras that were following us in case we needed them. And once we got up to the ferry crossing and dropped the troops off, And once they got on land and started going inland, they started having trouble. They ran into the VC and they had a big firefight. And but we were okay, and we stayed there for a few days. But getting back to why I didn't care about having the Vietnamese on board was the day we were going to leave. One of the boats didn't get underway at all. And when they went over there to check on them, they found out that the Vietnamese that they had on there were VC, and they had cut the guys. They had killed every one of them on there. They cut their throats at night. And I think after that, other than they cook very well, we were able to eat a lot better.
So these were guys that originally we thought they were South Vietnamese,
Right,
not South
right.
Vietnamese Marines. They actually turned out being VC.
These are the two sailors that were on the boat that they were training. They weren't part of the troop. They weren't part of the troops. They were the two sailors, Vietnamese sailors that were on there that they were training.
And they turned out to be VC.
Yeah.
Let's say you're on the river, things are quiet, and another guy on the boat asks you, why are we here? What's the point of us being here? What's all this about? I kind of doubt that you had those kind of conversations, but if somebody did ask you that question halfway through your tour in the Mekong, what do you think you would have said?
I don't know. That's what I probably would have said. Yeah, I mean, once you're there and you can't get out, you don't have any other choice but to do your job and try to survive, try to get out of there.
That's all it is, right?
Yeah, it's just an everyday occurrence, going through what you have to go through. I don't know if we had any troops on board or not, but we were going out to set ambush, and we went up this one canal and past a village, and they started banging pots and pans together. And I was told that that they were sending out a signal notifying the VC that Americans were in the area. And but one of the guys took care of that. He kind of like shot over there, and they kind of quit banging on the pots and pans. But we got up there and we set ambush, and everything was fairly quiet for a while, and then all of a sudden, we started seeing people out there in the rice paddies, and it was a bunch of people, and they were coming toward us, toward all the boats, and so we opened fire and basically started a firefight. We had, I think it was like a P-38 was in the area. Anyway, I remember him coming in there and dropping some stuff on him. And he stayed with us quite a while because, I mean, it was unusual sound, a plane that sounded like a mosquito or something. But he stayed with us quite a while, moving in and out of that area and dropping stuff. And they were pretty close. We had fired so much on a 50 caliber and the barrel was turning red. It was so, they had done a lot of shooting. And then it got quiet again. And then since I was up on that gun a lot, I lay down on the deck, to get some rest. And I probably hadn't laid there about a couple of minutes before I heard this guy start yelling that there's a swimmer in the water. And I think it was one of the chief on the boat. We had a chief in charge of us. I think he's the one that went over there and shot the guy. Yeah, he was right in the water near our boat.
So a VC sapper maybe trying to put a mine on the boat or a grenade or something?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was kind of weird because I mean I was laying on the deck, he started shooting and stuff. It kind of wakes you up. But yeah, we finally, you know, kept them from coming any closer. I think that plane had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, if it wasn't for that plane, yeah, I don't know what would have been the outcome of it.
Were you ever part of missions where boats have recordings that are playing that are, telling people about the spirits of their
Yeah, why you mention that?
huh?
That's strange that you mentioned that because they did send us out one night with this speaker. It was a huge speaker, and it was about two or three boats, and they made us go down the canal, blasting this chew hoy stuff. You know, telling them that the spirits or evil spirits are going to get them if they don't surrender, and that's what they were telling us that it was saying. And we got tired of hearing it, so we put Led Zeppelin on there, and we definitely got in trouble for that
So you
when
guys
we
you got
went back.
tired of the Chuhoy stuff and started cranking
Yeah,
into the
yeah, that was our favorite. Our favorite group was Led Zeppelin. Basically, we listened to that a lot. We had on that Tango boat, we had mounted like speakers that we got from home on the boat, hanging at different places. And in the mornings when we left the ambush and went back to outpost or base camp or wherever we were going,
Yeah.
we normally play some tapes, Led Zeppelin and stuff like that when we were going back.
So I mean, so these villagers they go from Chuhoy to Zeppelin, huh? Or whatever, or whatever.
Yeah, well, we'd always like smoke a joint going back anyway. And I think one guy on the boat didn't smoke. He drank Budweiser beer when he could get them. But most of the time in the mornings, everybody was smoking, listening to Led Zeppelin going back. So that was one of the treats
Yeah.
of being there. But
When you think back on all these experiences you had, you know, in retrospect, what do you think about that decision you made to volunteer to go in the country?
yeah, I don't know. I kind of sometimes I regret it because I'd like to know what kind of person I would have been if I hadn't have gone. How my life would have been. I don't know if I regret going. Some of the best times of my life was over there, actually. There were times where they would put us in an area that wasn't so bad, and we'd hang out there the night, and we had a little dog on there and a little monkey, and those two would the monkey would ride the dog on his back, and we had some fun times too. It's a weird experience. I always thought what kind of person I would have been if I hadn't have gone there. um because your personality and everything changes about you.
Well, how did it change you? What impact did it have on you?
I think it affected my life afterwards about my marriages, and I've been married three times, and my last wife just passed away about a year and a half ago, but we were married like 30 years. So, but the first couple, I had anger man. Yeah, I had anger problems, and it wasn't directed toward anybody. It was just, it was like dealing with people. I think, just simple things that people did that just irritated the hell out of me, and stupid things, things that they were concerned about, when when your life here in the States was so much better, than what I went through. I'll never forget Christmas Eve, because it was like probably one of the saddest times of my life, really. Um, I was
Okay.
We were on ambush, and I was sitting up on the flight deck on this because we had little flight decks on these boats, where they could bring in a helicopter and medevac and stuff. and sitting up there with another guy, and we were at ambush, and it was 6 of us on a boat, and we were 2 at a time. We take, sit up there and take watch. If anything happened, we'd have to get the other guys up. And it was Christmas Eve, and I'll never forget it. It was the moon was out, and I was just looking down the canal at how calm everything was, and the light on the water, and it kind of like made me sad that I was there. And then all of a sudden, this helicopter started coming over. I started hearing this helicopter, and he was pretty high, and he was flying over past us. And it was like the loneliest sound I ever heard in my life. It's like because he was leaving, and I could hear him go away, and we were still like there. But yeah, that was a pretty sad time, man.